Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, it's been very clear that Kirby Smart, the Georgia Bulldogs, they will be active in the spring transfer portal window, specifically getting aggressive with some of the more impressive line of scrimmage players on the defensive side of the football that you see available. Dill, I look at Georgia's defensive line. It's certainly not in a bad spot. There are 99% of college football programs across the country that would look at the two deep for Georgia on the defensive line and take it in a heartbeat. I think where Kirby Smart's coming from, it goes back to, all right, what's the best version of this Georgia team? What does a national championship caliber team look like for the Georgia Bulldogs? Well, we saw that a couple of years ago. It's not only having elite players on the defensive line. You know, when Georgia was the best team in the sport and winning national championships, and people talked about Jordan Davis and Devontae Wyatt and Jalen Carter, Dill, as Michigan fans that watched the Michigan team get absolutely boat raced by Georgia in the college football playoffs, I think we understand what made Georgia special. Yeah, they were elite on the defensive line in terms of top-end talent. That team was ridiculously deep. The best version of Georgia is not only top-end talent on the defensive line, but elite depth on the defensive line. And I think Kirby Smart's doing this spring transfer portal window saying, hey, we got to get there going into 2025. And it looks like they're going to spare no expense trying to make that thing happen. Want to get into some of the most intriguing names that we see Georgia going after, but we're going to rank them. And though we don't necessarily agree on what the ranking should look like in terms of who should be the top targets. So we'll get into a little bit of a discussion. I'm sure if you're a Georgia fan checking this out, you probably have your own takes too. Let it fly in the comment section. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, I'm hoping we see a commitment over the next couple of days because I want to break down some of these guys a little bit more in depth. Appreciate you guys. Dill, we do agree on this. Bo Atkinson from North Carolina has to be the number one target for Georgia. I've talked about him a lot. To me, Dill, I think he's the best overall player in the transfer portal that we see in this window.
I would definitely agree with that. And it starts with again, yeah, the spring hasn't really hit with some big names. It doesn't feel like yet. And right now I look in terms production on the field, I think the ability to maybe take some steps, Bo Atkinson, I think combines them both really well and really fits, I think, what Georgia wants to do, like a strong physical defensive end, has the ability to rush the passer. And the reason I think he's kind of that must get for Georgia is I do think they need that difference maker on the edge. Like, have you seen enough from Gabe Harris? The young guys, again, coming up with a lot of talent, but you haven't seen any of them dominate yet. Bo Atkinson, you've seen really high level dominant football from him. And I think Georgia needs a guy in that edge room to be a high. They have that in the defensive tackle room, I guess. I don't know that they have that right now.
This is Kirby Smart's type of guy too. Like he kind of reminds you of a little bit of Michael Williams, like very similar athletic profile, and quite frankly, very similar play in the football field as well. And I know that's high praise for Bo Atkinson. I'm just telling you how I feel. This is kind of how I look at a guy like Bo Atkinson. They'll elite against the run. And you've seen Kirby Smart not play some really good pass rushers because they can't play the run the right way. You ain't gonna have that problem with Bo Atkinson. Sneaky, really good first step. So you kind of look at him, say 6'6", 265. He's a speed to power guy using those length and those heavy hands. Yes, he does do that. Also wins with some burst and bend around the edge. There's a lot of ways this kid can win as a pass rusher.
Just a very developed player, and he has the athleticism, he has the traits you want, but he is more developed than a lot of the guys we're seeing in the spring right now.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. I mean, that's kind of a nice segue to Elo Modozie, who I don't mean to do this, but I'm going to do it anyways. I made the Michael Williams loose player comp with Bo Atkinson. Dilly, tell me this kid doesn't remind you a little bit about Jalen Walker. And I think there are very similar concerns that you had with Jalen Walker early in his career. Jalen Walker was the best pass rusher on that football team in 2023, at least in my opinion. Didn't play as much football because he wasn't quite there against the run. Probably a similar conversation you can have with Elo. Dill, I think this kid can be a freaky pass rusher, and quite frankly, he is a freaky pass rusher. But he's a guy that you probably want to see be a little bit more physical at the point of attack and show the ability to take on blocks, get off blocks, and fit the run the right way. But I think the biggest thing for him is He's got 3 years of eligibility. Like, to me, I look at Kirby Smart going after Elo and say, you can provide some pass rush juice for us immediately in 2025. Well, this kid could be in 2026 with 12 months in this Georgia system in that weight room. That's what I think fires up Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldog fans the most about Elo Modozie from Army.
And you just look at kind of the track he's been on. I mean, came into Army as like really not a playable college football player, like
Yeah.
really small, put on about 50 pounds, I think, since he's entered this
Yep.
Army program. And you kind of still see it. Like that is where he struggles, like the play strength, and that's both
Yes.
in the run and frankly in his pass rush. Like his ability to rush the passer, if he just gets a little bit stronger and like looks a little bit more like your prototypical Georgia defensive end, if you will, I think he'd be elite because I think he already kind of has the bag of tools, if you will, as a pass rusher. Like he really does have a good array of moves to win with, really bendy, really twitchy on the edge, like those things you definitely want to see as a pass rusher. And that's why I think, again, like I don't know that he is the best player in the transfer portal right now, but I do
Yes.
think at a position in need and with a skill set that Georgia, I think, does need to address in terms of like that really kind of elite ability on the edge, I do think he'd be a really important get. And it
Yeah,
sounds like
and
they're in a
man,
good spot
and
for him.
man, yeah, it's such a perfect fit. Like, if you're Kirby Smart, you're just you're selling him on what you did with Jalen Walker over the last couple of years. Now, here's where I probably disagree, Dill. You have Elo too. I have Murad Watson too. So we're going to talk about him now. Here's why I have Murad Watson too. To me, Dill, it's very clear Kirby Smart wants to add another body in the middle of this defensive line, whether it's depth, whether it's a difference maker. Now, here's just the reality of where Georgia sits here. Kirby Smart, you might want to add an interior defensive line in this spring transfer portal window. There ain't many guys across the country. There's certainly not many guys in the spring transfer portal window that will play on Georgia in 2025. That's just the reality of it. To me, Murad Watson's one of those guys. You look at Murad Watson was a true freshman last year for Syracuse, played over 500 snaps. That's always something I look for when I'm evaluating defensive linemen. How much are you on the field? Like that's telling me that Fran Brown and Syracuse felt like they could barely take this kid off the field. When you're playing that much as a true freshman, that tells you something. Really good against the run as a true freshman. Probably needs some development as a pass rusher. Look, I think the pass rush upside's there. I just think he needs to learn how to do it a little bit more. To me, because he's really the only guy that I think would really have an impact on this Georgia interior defensive line immediately in 2025 with 3 years of eligibility remaining. That's why I would really, if I'm Georgia, go after a guy like Murad Watson.
See, because I do agree with that to an extent. I do think he's probably a little further along than Elo, maybe just like player to player, if you will.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
Elo, again, like a much bigger position in need, which is probably my
Agreed with
reason
that.
to think that he is kind of
Yeah,
that must get.
yeah,
And just like his trajectory is really exciting. And I think
yeah,
Elo could very much be a high impact guy for Georgia in 25.
yeah.
I just look like, are you so convinced that Murad Washington's so much better than those other redshirt freshmen Georgia has? Like you think about a Nasir Johnson or a Jordan Thomas, like if they were on Syracuse, would have they been playing that much? I think they would have played a lot on Syracuse, frankly, some of those guys. So
Yeah, but
I think you have your top end, you have your Kristen Millers, you have Xavier McLeod, who I think is playing. I really liked what he did last year. So you have that, but you also do have a fair amount of guys filtering up through this program in the way you're kind of looking for.
well,
So I
okay,
just don't
so
really
my
see it
my
as a
counter argument would be then why is Kirby Smart seemingly going after so many interior defensive linemen? Like that might tell me that hey, we're maybe not
yeah,
sure about
maybe.
some of these young guys coming through. And look, I mean, like we can just kind of fast forward to some of the other defensive linemen that Georgia's looking at. Like you had Josh Horton on a visit coming from Miami. Dude, he ain't playing for Georgia, in my opinion. Like, I would be stunned if he's 20 plus snaps a game for Georgia in 2025. You have a guy like Troy Pikes from Georgia Southern. It's another name I would be stunned if he plays 20 plus snaps for Georgia. Really, there's only two interior defensive linemen that I've seen in the portal that I think would be significant contributors to Georgia. Number one is David Stone. He can't come to Georgia because he's in the SEC.
I don't even know if I agree with that,
Yeah,
frankly.
and you're right. That's true, but that's beside the point here. The point is that there's not many guys. Like Kirby Smart clearly wants to address this position. I ain't seeing many defensive linemen that would play for Georgia. Murad Watson's really the only one, and for me, that's why I think if you're Georgia, you're turning it up. And here's another angle here. who's your competition to go and win a national championship? I'd argue Ohio State's one of them. Ohio State desperately, Texas desperately needs interior defensive linemen. They're circling this kid too. If you can prevent him going to Ohio State or Texas too, that's helping your chances in the college football playoffs this year. There ain't no doubt about that
Yes,
either.
yeah, I guess I get that. Hey, I think you got to run your own race, make your team better.
I
I just
agree.
look,
I agree with that.
I
I
think
agree with
that edge
that.
room is such a much bigger position to need because
Yeah.
I'm not convinced you have that guy yet. I
Yeah,
think
sure.
in the defensive line room, you feel great about Kristen Miller. I think he's awesome. You feel good
Okay.
about McLeod. You feel better about Hall considering what you've heard from the spring and kind of the flashes you've seen.
Okay.
I know it's been inconsistent.
Let me ask you a question here. You get to pick two here. You get to pick a combination. You can either we both agree Bo Atkinson is the
Yeah, it's
guy.
probably got to be Bo and Murad.
That's
fair.
right. That's kind of where I'm going with it too. But if you land Bo Atkinson and Murad Watson, to me that kind of changes how I look at this Georgia team. Last name we have to buzz by, and Dill, I know you scoffed at it, and that pissed me off. Josh McCray. Look, and there might be some Georgia fans who scoff at it too, and I get it. Like Josh McCray ideally does not play much for Georgia. Georgia very clearly wants to add a veteran running back. It's really hard to add a veteran running back to Georgia because you have so much young talent that's clearly going to be the guys. Like Nate Frazier's your running back one. Bo Walker's had a phenomenal early start to his Georgia career. I think Chauncey Bowens is a stud. You're looking for a veteran running back. If Josh McCray is willing to come to Georgia, and it sounds like he is, like this would make so much sense for me. And kind of I love Josh Dill. I remember back in the 2021 season, like this kid as a true freshman was a dude for Illinois. Dealt with some injuries the last couple of years, had a solid year in 2024. Look, he ain't going to come and run for over 1,000 yards for Georgia. It's a big body that likes to get downhill. I don't know how much value he would provide outside of depth, but Dill, we know like you want to win a national championship, you got to make sure you're a deep enough football team. And Josh McCray certainly would help that for Georgia.
Yeah, I guess you simply don't have that much. I haven't been wildly impressed by the running backs, especially for that type of depth guy. Like again,
Really?
Georgia can't go out, I don't think, and get a Jaden Ott. Like that's just not in the cards for them because he doesn't
Yeah.
play there necessarily. In terms of depth guys, I guess you're probably right. This probably does make sense.
I think there are a couple of different options at running back for Ned, but the problem is getting these guys to want to come.
That's for Georgia. Like, what are your? I know there's some good running backs, but Georgia just can't really take their shots at a ton of them because it's a crowded room.
And you wouldn't want to. Like, why would Georgia go out and pay a boatload of money to Jaden Ott when you feel like you have your running backs who can be your difference makers? You're just looking for a veteran back that can. And the other thing with Josh McCray is he does provide a unique skill set. Like this is a short yardage back that Georgia might use. You talk about like the SEC championship, 3rd and 1, gotta have it. I don't care. Josh McCray only has to play five plays a year, but if he comes up big in maybe some of those moments, that it's value, man. And again, that's to the extent of it. But he's the other name that Georgia's looking at, probably towards the bottom of the list. You just want to get a veteran running back that you trust. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, Bo Atkinson, that one fires me up the most. We'll see how it turns out. I also don't want him in Columbus, Ohio, so I'm rooting for Georgia in this one. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later.